Okay, thanks. Thanks for coming. My name's Neil Perry, and today we'll be looking at an introduction to MDaemon. So let's have a look at MDaemon. Is this just an email platform? Well, definitely not, and this is often a common misconception with MDaemon. We get new customers coming along thinking it's just a glorified POP3 mailbox solution. Back in the day, maybe that was true, but now we're looking at an awful lot more than just email. So I wanted to sort of introduce the different categories of MDaemon, and I'll start off with messaging. I mean, messaging is a key component of any mail platform. And let's think about how users generally connect. Outlook is by far the most common connection method, and there are different protocols that you can use in Outlook to connect to MDaemon. Typically, historically, you may be looking at POP3 or IMAP synchronization. Though POP3 generally we don't recommend these days. It's very limited. It's client side only, and it really is just a basic email platform with no sort of folder synchronization. IMAP is great, gives you all the synchronization for messaging, but it is just an email-only solution. For true sort of synchronization into Outlook, we recommend you use the Outlook connector add-on for MDaemon. I will look at that in a lot more detail later on. But the key feature of MDaemon here is that it allows you to centralize your email mailboxes for multiple users on a network, store them within MDaemon, and then synchronize them out to Outlook clients. It's not just Outlook, but by all means. I mean, you can connect any IMAP POP3 clients. You can connect different devices as well. For direct access to your mailbox, you can connect through a very feature-rich webmail client, and I'll go and show you through a lot of details of that a little bit later on. For mobile devices, but also for Outlook 2013 support and the new Windows 8 mail client, there's a full ActiveSync support. MDaemon has a built-in ActiveSync server. So this again synchronizes mailboxes, folder structure, and shared resources, but it's still, you're focusing in on this idea that your mailbox lives and stays on MDaemon, and then you synchronize it from multiple clients. Another key messaging function is the ability to do instant messaging. Sometimes email is not necessarily the best method for communicating between users. It's great for sending documents and letters, but if you just want a quick chat with a colleague that's at the other side of the office in a secure way, then it's very useful to be able to use the built-in instant messaging function. And we'll look at that as well as a few more slides. As well as basic messaging function, a key component really is the ability to collaborate with the other users. We may be talking about sharing of mail and mail folders, maybe even public folders, and we can look at that a little bit later on as well. But we've got to bring in as well the concepts of calendars, contacts, tasks, notes. These are all key work tools that you use in an office, especially calendars. And being able to share those calendars, have public resource calendars, things like meeting rooms, pull cars. There's lots of different reasons why you need different calendars, and especially contact lists. Businesses like to keep a lot of contact lists for different groups of users. Being able to collaborate and share those components is key, and MDaemon allows that within Outlook, but also through that ActiveSync protocol we can share that out to mobile devices, iPhones, Android mobiles, iPads, different devices. Most modern devices now support ActiveSync, so being able to collaborate with all users is a key role. As well as sort of collaboration there, things like being able to share documents. This is a relatively new feature in MDaemon, but it also allows you to have a document store of commonly sent documents that you can access through the webmail interface, and also through both webmail and Outlook connector. You can configure and set up an out-of-office responder, which is very useful for for responding when automatically responding when you're not available. Mobility is definitely a key feature with any modern mail platform, and MDaemon has a lot of support and a lot of history here for different protocols. Over the years, there's been several different technologies. Really, we're at a nice point now where ActiveSync pretty much rules across all of the platforms. Even BlackBerry themselves have jump ship and jumped to using ActiveSync primarily for all of their new BlackBerry 10 devices. There is support for previous BlackBerry 9 devices. We don't tend to see an awful lot of use of that now. People are moving away from that, but there is a built-in BlackBerry server there. For all the other devices, ActiveSync allows for full two-way synchronization of email, folder structure, public folders, and shared folders. Very useful if you're collating email directly into public folders, but also shared calendars and contacts and even tasks on certain devices. The ActiveSync protocol allows for quite a lot of different sharing technology. It's really down to the device and what it supports, to what limitation there is. You can also have some quite good control over these devices, obviously in a business environment, and even so in a small business environment where you've got lots of users with their own devices, the BYOD type scenario. Being able to set up policies and control those devices, requiring passwords, secure level passwords, being able to remote wipe the devices or remote wipe the data associated to your email, that capability is really key. Safe in the knowledge that if you've got users connecting their own devices through to your MDaemon platform, if they lose that device or if it's stolen from them, you can securely remove that data. And then another sort of key area really and strength of MDaemon is security. For many years now, Alt10, the developers of MDaemon, have worked and changed the product to provide that, it's a very secure platform. We're talking about anti-spam, antivirus type protection, but it doesn't really just stop there. There's key features here for controlling access to the mail platform, detecting if an account has been compromised. If a username and password is known, it's not the end of the world. You can detect this automatically and control how much potential spam could be sent through the server. Blocking of relaying. I mean, relaying is a key reason that spammers try to find open mail servers, is to be able to send large volumes of email through them. So there's lots of components there that help combat against all of these different types of threat. On the flip side of things as well, there's this outbound reputation. You may not be quite aware, but things like, I'll talk about later on, but SPF records and DKIM, these are methods that allow you to set up your presence on the internet so that when you're sending email, other mail servers will trust you more and know that the mail is coming from you. So you can start to build a very good reputation. And MDaemon fully supports these technologies and automatically tags messages as they leave to provide that type of solution. Another sort of area of security that's often overlooked is that all of the protocols in MDaemon, all the connection protocols, so ActiveSync, IMAP, Outlook Connector's own protocol, Web Access especially, they're all available in a secure form using SSL. And you have the unsecure option as well. We generally only recommend that for internal access, but for external access, you have secure access that can be configured, and it really is key to making sure that especially your usernames and passwords aren't captured on the wire. For system administrators, some sort of main features that stand out are, well, initially the low system requirements. MDaemon is a platform that's always been designed with small to medium-sized businesses in mind. It doesn't need a huge server with gigabytes and gigabytes of RAM and massive disks. It will run quite happily on a Windows client operating system if required. It doesn't need a Windows Server platform. It certainly doesn't need an SQL server or any other Windows component in the background. It'll run quite happily in a self-contained structure. It runs in a standard Windows flat file system, so again, it's very easy to move and migrate around the network if you do need to move it onto a different machine in the future. Really, the only sort of thing I like to point out in system requirements is disk access speed is really the key component, and that's most important for either very large mailboxes or large numbers of users. And then you may be looking at a RAID disk array and SAS-based drives, but generally speaking, it's a very low system requirement compared to an equivalent Exchange platform, for example. There is a built-in remote administration through a web interface, and this allows you to configure MDaemon almost entirely through that web interface. Typically, I'll be talking today about the built-in Windows GUI for local administration. It still has a few advantages for ease of access, but long-term, I think the product will move entirely to a web-based interface. The actual long-term ownership costs are very low with MDaemon. You pay up front for a year of cover for a number of users, and then there's a renewal cost on top of that. I won't go into the costs here in this webinar. They are flexible, but they're all publicly available on our website. We make the RRP prices known. It's a very customizable product, get my words out. By that I mean that it's always been designed to allow administrators to change the flow of email, to configure it to work in the way that they need to. It's very visible exactly what's going on in MDaemon. So it may be that you have a particular working method and you need messages to flow into relevant locations. There's a very powerful content filter engine I'll show a little bit later on that helps you to move messages as required. A lot of people will be coming to MDaemon because of the end of life of SPS server, and this is something we're hearing an awful lot about over the last few months. And if you're an existing SPS user, what are your options? What are Microsoft recommending you do now that SPS is no longer available? Well, it's a bit frustrating really, because the two sort of directions are to, if you're a small company of less than 25 users, then they expect you to use Windows Server 2012 Essentials, which is a nice low-cost operating system, and then push you down the cloud platform. Which does suit some users, and for those users and customers, that's absolutely fine. But if you're more than 25 users, there is an option there. You have to then have a full-blown 2012 standard server and full-blown Exchange for an on-premise solution. And this is the sort of glaring gap that we're seeing. That there's a lot of resellers and customers that are seeing and wanting a solution that fits in here, that is for less than 25 users definitely, but also for users up into multiple hundreds that still are relatively small companies that don't want to have the expense of a full-blown Exchange server. There are definitely other reasons why customers don't necessarily want to go onto a cloud platform. It does suit some customers absolutely fine. I won't go through the reasons now, but definitely bandwidth is a key one, and we get a lot of customers that don't meet the 2 megabytes or download speeds that's really required for any real number of users. Even when you're talking about 10-15 users, the cloud solutions aren't necessarily the best direction. So the need for an on-premise small business platform is definitely strong. And this is really where MDaemon fits in. I mean, MDaemon has always been focused at small to medium-sized businesses, and providing a solution up to hundreds of users if required. But it's definitely most applicable in that sort of 25-50 user bracket. So let's have a look at the actual user experience. I wanted to start with how users see MDaemon and use MDaemon, just to give you a feel for the different connection methods. So I'll start with Outlook integration, and really we'll focus in on the Outlook connector method. So with Outlook Connector, we're talking about a full sort of collaboration experience. It's as close a solution to using Outlook with Exchange as the developers can make it. It takes over that primary connection. It's not an additional account, so you don't have like 2 inboxes and 2 sets of folders. It's one single folder tree for that user. It fully supports public and shared folders. So if if you're wanting to collaborate by storing certain mail in those folders and getting access to them, it's easy to do. There's a very detailed set of permissions that you can control from within Outlook as well. The actual connection method is over IMAP ports, and we recommend the secure version of those IMAP ports, but it's an extension to IMAP. So whereas IMAP is a mail-only platform, Outlook Connector takes it beyond there and gives it that support for calendars, contacts, and tasks, etc. And it can be suited very well. It's primarily the main connection method for local users, but also even for remote users, home workers, other remote office workers. It's a connection method that you can definitely use to be part of the network. So I just wanted to sort of kind of show you the interface for Outlook Connector. The install method first. The process of installing Outlook Connector is there's a server-side component you install in MDaemon once off. That's quite straightforward and easy to do. And then there's a client-side component that you install per user. That actual client side can be delivered via group policy if you need to send it to multiple users at once quite quickly. When you then set up a new profile in Outlook, you get this option to choose an other connection type and then Outlook Connector from that list. So this is where it's slightly different. If you're used to setting up Outlook as an IMAP account or an Exchange server, you're using one of the options above. Once you select that other option, that's when it fires up the Outlook Connector sort of setup wizard. And you can see an example there of how you need to know things like your own name, organization details, your email address, the mail server you're connecting to, and that's pretty much it. So a user can set themselves up as long as they know or they're given the mail server's address, which may be a local address or a remote address, depending on where they are in relation to the server, and their own email address and password. How does it look within Outlook itself? Well, like any other standard mail account would, I mean, like I said before, it takes over the root mailbox folder, so you see just a standard folder structure. Really, the only clue that there's anything different is that you get a new ribbon bar called Outlook Connector, where you have links through to setting up the actual account, managing your folders that you have access to, and also your out of office. There's also an about button there, but that's kind of self-explanatory. Public folder support, I just wanted to sort of show you how that looks. Exactly the same as Exchange, really. It's down the left-hand side. You can expand and see any public folders that you have been given access to see. By default, all users can see the main domain public folders, and there's a sort of example calendar, contacts, journal, notes, and tasks that's created. This is all configurable on the server by the admin if you want to, manage those default rights. But you can see how the folder structure is very straightforward. Shared folders are shown just underneath there as well. You get access to any shared folders that users have shared out since you last opened up Outlook. So sometimes you may need to close and reopen Outlook if a user's just shared something with you for it to then pop up in the shared folders. You can manage folder permissions. There's quite detailed different options on the folder permissions. It's not just a case of can you see them or not. Then you can have access to read them, write them, add items, change items, delete items. They're all different permissions, so it can be quite detailed on those permissions. When you're accessing calendars, you may notice here that I've already selected a calendar. Once you've opened any calendar, whether it's a personal calendar or a shared calendar or a public calendar, then the shortcuts are created. And if you need to, you can overlay multiple calendars at once, which is a nice feature of Outlook. So it does deal very well with multiple calendars. I mentioned before the out-of-office responder. That's a centralized stored set of text, really, that you can define, but you can edit it from within Outlook, and you can set to start and end date and time. So if you're going to be out of the office for a few days, then you can set it up early and know that it's going to kick in at the right time. It doesn't require Outlook or your machine as a client to be on to respond. It is a server-side feature. It's just controlled through Outlook Connector. The actual Outlook Connector configuration, I've already sort of briefly gone through the main account setup feature. If I go into the actual sort of more advanced options, The way that it works is it actually uses a persistent IMAP connection. So there's actually two IMAP connections from the client to the server, and the idea is that by using a persistent connection, that's there to alert you of any new email. So it's almost a push email solution. As soon as an email arrives at the server, an alert is pushed through this persistent connection, and then the secondary connection goes and grabs the message. So it's almost instantaneous and feels very much like you're using Exchange. There is a local cache as well for offline access to your own data. So if you connect with Outlook Connector and then you're on a laptop, let's say, and you move out of the office and you can't physically get internet access, you still have access to all of the data that you've previously synchronized. A bit like a PST file in Outlook, it's not using a PST, it's using its own database format, and there are functions in here to also manage and compact that database automatically to keep the performance running well. Now, as well as Outlook Connector, another key way that clients connect to MDaemon is through the WorldClient webmail interface. Now, WorldClient is something that a lot of users will use all of the time. It's not necessarily something that that you use now and again. But again, you may well be that you're connected with Outlook in the office, and you just happen to not be in the office, or you're at another machine and you need quick access. It's something you can swap and change between. It's by no means one or the other. WorldClient, obviously, with it being a web interface, is cross-platform. It'll run quite happily on a range of different browsers. There's a whole range of different themes as well to provide either simple theme for low bandwidth connections. Occasionally you might find that you're on a mobile very low bandwidth connection and you need access to your email. Then there's no need to have a very graphical and drag and drop interface. You want something quick and respond. That's a good reason to use the mobile interface. There are more advanced themes. The Lookout theme as well as the new WorldClient theme are both very drag and drop friendly. It's all HTML5 derived, and those are trying to make it feel a lot more like an email client, like Outlook or Outlook Express. It has 25 language support, so if you've got users that are remote to your network that are maybe in a different country and you just want to add them in, it's an ideal way of doing that, so you don't have to worry too much about setting up clients for them. Like I mentioned before, it's fully able to work over HTTP or HTTPS. Tend to find that most of the time now we're only using the secure interface. You can use the built-in web server. MDaemon runs its own built-in web server for WorldClient. And you can create your own SSL self-signed certificates, or you can import purchase root trusted certificates. For those bigger installations where you may have more than 100 concurrent users, that's the sort of level where we may then recommend you to run WorldClient under IIS. And this is an option, but it's really not needed unless you've got at least 100 concurrent sessions happening at once. We'll have a quick look at the new WorldClient theme, and this theme is actually called WorldClient. This was introduced in MDaemon 13.5, I believe. It may even be just MDaemon 14. No, it's MDaemon 14. What we've got here is the main logon page. So, assuming that you've connected your browser to the server address or fully qualified domain name of that points to your MDaemon server, this is what you would see. So you log on with your email address. Authentication with MDaemon is always really done with the email address and the password your account's been given. You've got an option here for the language to choose and the theme. So if we have a look at the actual WorldClient theme, you notice the theme is, especially this new WorldClient theme, is very minimalistic. It's designed to be easy to use. But then it's a common sort of structure. Down the left-hand side is your folders, and you can expand those as new messages arrive. Then the numbers will reflect the new messages in a folder live. You've got links through to your calendars, your contacts, tasks, notes. Even shared documents down the left-hand side, and then a preview window which can either be on the side or at the bottom, where you can actually see the message. It's fully HTML aware, obviously, for messages with pictured attachments. It's very easy to read. Quick look at the calendar. You can see that it's it's mimicking to some degree how calendars look in Outlook. You can still have access to any public calendars or shared calendars down the left-hand side. My slides are a little bit slow today, I'm afraid. I just wanted to point out the calendar within MDaemon is aware has free busy support. So if you're ever needing to create a meeting and you want to know when people are available, then you can just query against those other accounts of MDaemon, and it'll show you slots that that all match up where multiple users are available. And the same thing's true through WorldClient. Contacts, pretty straightforward. A list of contacts with all of the standard fields that you'd expect to be able to edit and search on. Tasks, again, a basic set of tasks, but these are all synchronized through to from the server through to WorldClient or through to Outlook through Outlook connector. So this is what's really nice about using WorldClient, is you can set lots of things up on Outlook and be synchronized there, and then only come into WorldClient now and again and still be able to find everything that you're used to working with in Outlook. The new, the document store is really a location for storing files that you commonly need to email, and you can share out document stores as well. So you could have a public document store or a shared document store for company-wide documents that you send out. It's not really a complete replacement for your local file system, but it's very useful, especially when you're remote, to know that all the latest product PDF files, information sheets or price documents are all available within WorldClient directly. A new feature in version 14 is the email template editor. This allows you to create common responses, really, emails that you want to use as a template. Very useful in a sort of support role where you're often responding with very similar detailed information, but you just want to pull it from a list of common responses. You can store these, and again, they can be accessed from within your own, or they can be shared to other users. And then when you compose a new email, you can just select the email template you want to send. So here you just pull it down from a list and then pre-populate the fields that you need to customize for that particular user. WorldClient fully supports HTML signatures. These can now include images as well as HTML, fonts and colors. So this is very useful from a user's point of view if you want a nice detailed signature, and then that's automatically appended to every message. We've got direct access to the out-of-office responder as well. The out-of-office responder is also known as the autoresponder. It's kind of two names that have evolved, but it's the same thing. It's the text that you can create to respond automatically when you're out of the office. The nice thing about it being available through the WorldClient is, as I often find out, is I leave the office, if I've forgotten to set up my out-of-office responder, and I can quickly log in, from my phone or from home, and just quickly enable the relevant dates, tweak the text if needed, and it's done. There's a built-in Spellchecker within MDaemon as well that allows you to have a custom dictionary per user. So if you've got commonly used words, you don't want them flagging up on every time you click to spell check a message before you send it. Very useful feature, kind of needed on any email platform. Just quick look at the sort of options. I won't go through all of the options within WorldClient, but you can give users access to do things like change the password. These are configurable as well on the server. You don't have to give users access. Configuring the password, changing the theme, design about how the actual theme looks to the user. You can also manage your own folders within. Slowing down a bit today, within WorldClient. So whereas typically within Outlook, you'd right-click and create a new folder, you can manage your folders, you can nest those folders, you can decide what sort of folder that is, whether it's a mail-based folder or an additional calendar, let's say, you could create. So you can still have, quite detailed control over a folder structure. Now, bear in mind, this is the same folder structure you're synchronizing with Outlook. So often it's quite a useful tool just to be able to move things around when you're out of the office. Sharing of folders is very similar as well. You can right-click on a folder now and choose who you want to share it with. Choose different access rights from within WorldClient. I also mentioned earlier on this concept of an instant messaging function, and this is a really nice feature for communicating quickly with other colleagues in the office. There is a built-in application. Well, I say built-in. It's an application you can download via your WorldClient logon called ComAgent, and ComAgent is a little helper application that does two things. It logs in to your WorldClient account and it can alert you of new messages. So if you haven't got WorldClient open and all you've got is ComAgent running, when new emails arrive, it'll give you a very brief overview of who sent you the message and the subject, and then you can just double click on the icon to automatically log you into WorldClient. So there's that side of the function, but there's also the ability to chat with any online colleagues that are logged into logged into ComAgent at the same time. This actual function is also available within WorldClient itself. There is a ComAgent sort of sidebar that you can load. So if you are out of the office and you think, oh, I could just do it, just chat into, Ross, who's at his desk, you can just, you can just log in and start chatting. You don't have to install anything. So this is another quick way of, being part of an instant messaging platform without actually having to send anything publicly. So what I want to do now is look in a little bit more detail at the mobile device support. We do get a lot of interest in MDaemon because of users wanting to get access with their various different mobile devices. I'll be honest with you now, 99% of the time we're looking at ActiveSync as the connection method. I will briefly touch on the BlackBerry side of things, but it's definitely dying off as a solution. So, like I mentioned, there is a built-in ActiveSync server. It is licensed separately. I won't go through the pricing here, but that's all available on the website. It's a per-user price in different blocks of users. As I mentioned before, there's also a built-in BlackBerry Bez Express server. That's free of charge, but like I say, it's not so widely used. But if you are using those older BlackBerry devices that require a Bez server to synchronize, that's there and available to use. It's really MDaemon focuses on creating a sort of a BYOD solution. I hate to use the term, but it's very true in smaller businesses where you will have users with all different types of devices that want to connect and get access to their mail platform. Typically, one user may well have multiple devices. It's very common these days that you have, a phone for work, or a phone that you use at work, I should say, and a tablet, and a desktop machine, and possibly a laptop. People do have multiple devices, so it's perfectly acceptable to have several different synchronizations going on at the same time for each user. It's designed from the outset. I mean, ActiveSync's one of its nice features is its user-side configuration. Users can set themselves up as long as they know their email address, their password, and not always, but they may need to know the mail server address. Depending on the device, it can automatically look that up based on the email address and the domain record you can set up to help with that. But that's all the user needs to know, and they can sign themselves up. From an administrator's point of view, the ability to create and manage policies and keep those users secure is really important. So I just wanted to really briefly just show you the steps involved in setting up ActiveSync on a couple of devices. So a typical Android device, the process is that you add an account. You choose corporate in Android. Sometimes on older versions of Android it's referred to as Exchange. In essence, ActiveSync is a Microsoft protocol. It is what's used by Exchange to synchronize remote devices. So look out for those terms if you're using an odd device. It's however you would normally expect to connect to Exchange. From a user's point of view, you log in as your full email address. Typically on Android, you start that with a backslash and your password. Then you need to type in your server address or let it automatically try and determine that. Like I said before, I recommend you always connect with a secure SSL connection, and in this example I'm using a self-signed certificate, so I need to tick the option to accept all certificate types. That's usually the one thing that throws people. If they're using self-signed certificates, the device often will not trust that out of the box, and that's something to bear in mind. I know Windows mobile devices are a bit picky about self-signed certificates. There's nothing wrong with MDaemon there, it's just that the device says no, you need a root trusted purchase certificate. So bear that in mind if you're having any issues. After you've added the details in, it's really a case of what do you want to synchronize. On Android, you typically can do email, calendars, and contacts, and you can choose them from the list, and you can choose whether the account's the default account. It's kind of an obvious feature there. What you have to remember is ActiveSync does fully support now public and shared email folders and public and shared calendars. So it's whatever this user has access to. The access is controlled either on the server or through WorldClient or through Outlook connector. But if you, as a user, have access to a public folder structure, then you can still see that on your phone, and that's very, very useful if you're storing mail in public folders. And then the final sort of stage here is to agree to the security policy. So by default there will be a policy created on MDaemon, and the clients have to decide if I join the corporate network, or the company network I should say, do I agree that the MDaemon is able to potentially, if it wants to, erase all my data, set password rules, and monitor the screen unlock feature. You're not saying please let it delete everything on my phone. It's just the fact that there is a remote wipe feature in MDaemon, and the user has to agree to it before they sign up. That's an Android feature. Similarly, on an iPhone, it's a very similar procedure, slightly less steps. User details, server details, what do you want to synchronize, and then I just wanted to show sort of an example of how the public folders and shared folders are shown within an iOS mail client. On Android, it's a little bit more. You've got to go down different stages. They're all visible. It's just the way it's presented to the user is a little bit nicer on an iPhone. For those older BlackBerry devices, if you do need to synchronize them to the BES server, the process of setting those users up is a bit different. So the way you do it is you log into WorldClient, and if you've turned on BlackBerry support, then there'll be a BlackBerry management link in the list, and effectively you plug your phone into the computer you're running WorldClient on. So that can be any machine that's got access to WorldClient. And through the USB cable, it runs a little sort of driver to synchronize that device. It's telling the device to associate it with the MDaemon server through RIM's own data network. I don't want to go into much more detail about that, to be honest, because these days we're finding so little requirement for it that it's almost, I can imagine in a few revisions it just won't be needed. But if you are still using older BlackBerry devices, BlackBerry 10 devices are ActiveSync, and they're set up in a very similar way to how you've just seen with the Androids and iPhones. It's only for the BlackBerry 9 devices that you need to use BES. If we have a look at the actual mobile device policy management, what sort of things can we control there? Well, typical things are password strength. That's the key sort of feature for any policy, is how strong is a password, how many letters does it have to have, how often does it have to be changed. This is a sort of level that you can create within an ActiveSync policy. You can also do things like define how much email would be synchronized and how much calendar data should be synchronized. That's a user side change as well. Well, this overwrites that. So if you want to say, well, actually, I'm only ever going to let users see their last 2 weeks worth of email, it doesn't matter if they ask for everything in their mailbox, it's not going to try and do that. That's quite useful for two reasons: for bandwidth management, but also it potentially means that you've not got users with vast quantities of secure email on their devices. Very quick look at the BES policy editor. If it catches up. There we go. A bit more in depth, and this allows you to do a bit more things to do with, forcing the screen to be locked when it's holstered, setting in the max number of password attempts. I won't go through every single option here, but you can see that the policy management is a bit more powerful for Bez. It's one of the things that RIM did when they set up Bez Express, was to make the policy capability quite in depth. So I've hopefully given you a bit of an idea of how users connect and use MDaemon. So I just want to now switch to looking at an administrator's view of the software. And I'll start by looking at the actual MDaemon interface itself. So this is the little screenshot here is the actual MDaemon GUI. This is the application that you run on the server to get access to all of the settings within MDaemon. And the main window is kind of split up into these two sections. On the left-hand side is statistics and information about the server activity right now. Then on the right-hand side, you're viewing whichever live log that you've selected down at the bottom with those little tabs. So if I talk about the live statistics first of all, I think yeah, top left here, live statistics. This is really just counters. It's to know how many accounts you've got, how many current sessions you've got, inbound, outbound. If you're collecting pop mail, that'll be over domain pop or possibly multi-pop. And then the number of concurrent sessions that not concurrent sessions, the number of sessions that have happened that day. You can drill down further here. I'm just at the very top level. You're looking at the sort of total number since the GUI was opened or restarted, I should say. But you can drill down to show me, how many IMAP sessions I've had today or yesterday or over the last week, that sort of thing. Then you've got things like spam, how many spam accepted and refused. People often wonder, what do you mean by spam accepted? Well, spam accepted is not spam that's got through to the users. It's spam that hasn't been rejected at the door, i.e. a message has arrived. It's not clear whether it's spam or not at that very first stage, so it's accepted it and then later on decided, no, actually, with a deeper scanning of the actual body of the message, I've discovered that it's not. It is spam, and I'm now going to have to delete it or put it in the spam trap. So spam accepted and spam refused together make up effectively spam that have been detected. Similar thing for viruses, whether it's been detected or refused at the door. Then you've got a list of all your queues. MDaemon works around this idea of queues. Messages come into the inbound queue and then they're delivered to either the local queue if they're destined to local users, or if they're going out, again, if it's a message coming into the server to go out to an external domain, it would go into the remote queue. Retry queue is messages that have tried to go out and for whatever reason haven't been able to go yet, so they're ready, they're going to try again, they're in the retry state. Then you've got things like the holding queue for messages that need intervention. There's maybe potentially been a problem with one of the stages and it needs manual intervention. Bad queue are messages that can't be delivered for whatever reason and have to be put somewhere to be looked at. And then things like the quarantine is for messages that contain quarantined attachments. And then you've got your LAN and your raw queue for sort of more system-based messages. Below all that, we've got then the service monitoring, and the service monitoring is really looking at the different services within MDaemon. MDaemon's got different protocols, different services. You may be aware of things like SMTP for sending of email. There's also a POP3 server, an IMAP server. ActiveSync itself is a server, and there's again WorldClients at the bottom there. WebAdmin is the web administration service. They're all separate services. They run on different ports. They potentially can be started or stopped, run on different IP addresses or bound to different network cards. So this whole section is to allow you to see the status of all of these services very quickly. Oh, I've kind of jumped ahead of myself with the message queues. The message queue management is I mentioned before, these different queues. You can go into any of these queues, freeze them. That's very useful for stopping the flow of email quickly. I often freeze a queue, stop it, so I can go in and then look at that message live to see exactly what it contains before I then unfreeze the queue and let it go further down the message track. You can also click through here to the queue and stats manager, where you can see a lot more information about all the different users of the system. Things like how many messages each user has in their mailbox, how much disk space they're using up. There we go. You can even double click on a user's account and see exactly the messages it contains. So, without having to launch a client, we can see that this user has these messages in their inbox. You can see who they're from, who they're to, where they would be delivered to, the subject header, the size of the message. You can even double click on any of those messages and see the raw text file. So it's very useful for admins who want to really know what's going on. If a message has arrived and you're trying to hunt it down, you can search and find it, without ever having to launch a client or even a web interface. Each service there's some very detailed logging for those services. So commonly we'll be looking at the SMTP logs, and here we're looking at an SMTP out log, but we could easily be looking at an SMTP in log, which makes more sense really. Messages coming in, it's color coded, it allows you to see exactly what's happening at the command level. It's unlike Exchange, where it's kind of, you see the result of a message arriving and what it thinks it's done with it. You can now see every single command, and if you know your way around SMTP, then you'll recognize all the statements here. And it allows us to provide very detailed support as well, because we can, through these logs, I mean, as an admin you'll learn this over time, but we've got a lot of experience here to see what stage is happening, what potentially which security feature of MDaemon may have refused the message. It's all detailed, it's all logged in detail, so it's very visible what's going on. I just wanted to have a quick screenshot here showing all the different sort of options on the login. That there's an awful lot that you can configure here. Often you find you wouldn't leave all of this on at once, but as well as logging to the screen, it can log, and it will log out to the file system. So you've got a lot of historic data there. So if somebody says I'm missing an email, you can very easily go back and search and find exactly what happened, when did it arrive, what did MDaemon do with it, what was the outcome of that decision. Account management, I should mention that MDaemon is a multiple domain platform. You're not licensed per domain. It's you can have as many domains as you want. You're licensed on the number of users, but often you'll find that a company will have multiple domains. Those domains may go to individual users. They may well just all point to the same set of users. It's all down to how you want to configure things. You manage the users within MDaemon. Those users can either be set up locally within MDaemon on a manually, add one at a time. If it's a small number of users, that's quite common. Or if you need to, you can link those users through to an Active Directory server and have them looked up live. So it'd bring the accounts in, and the passwords are never stored within MDaemon. They're looked up live against the AD. You can also do things like control the sort of access on a per account basis. There's very detailed per account controls. I won't go through all these again. I could probably spend a whole hour just trying to talk you through the different settings here. But what's important really is that you can say, well, this user is allowed access through IMAP but not POP3, or they can only use one of these protocols from just the LAN network. That sort of thing. It's quite in-depth control. As well as those protocols, the actual web service itself, I've kind of touched on this before, you can define what can users do when they're logged into WorldClient. Can they edit their own details? Can they change the password? Can they configure their autoresponder, their out of office, etc.? You can define this on a per user basis. There is an account quota system as well that allows you to define how big mailboxes can get, what to do when those mailboxes reach a percentage of their maximum size. And you can apply this across the board for a set of accounts or on a per account basis, so you can have a more detailed account quota for a handful of users. I showed you the WorldClient web interface, but there's also WebAdmin, and WebAdmin is the administrator web interface. It runs on a separate port, but it allows you to fully configure MDaemon through a web interface. Like I mentioned right at the beginning, I think long term this will become the main way of administrating MDaemon. It's kind of grown over the years to add some of the components, and then over time it's had more and more until it's pretty much everything you can do in MDaemon you can do through the MDaemon GUI, you can do through WebAdmin. It runs on HTTP or HTTPS. If you're ever going to use it externally, you definitely only run it on HTTPS. Sort of things you can do here is it monitors the server for free space, so it's important to know, how much space you've got. Things will not run healthily if you're running out of space on the drives that MDaemon's installed on. You can do things like start and stop the MDaemon service from here. WebAdmin runs separately from MDaemon, so when you stop MDaemon, you don't stop the actual WebAdmin service. There are a set of traffic charts. Now these are growing, and in future releases we're hoping for some more data here, but this allows you to see what's going on, the number of sessions, how many messages have been sent in a set time, to get a feeling for the actual load on the server. You can access the logs as well through WebAdmin. These are they're not updated. Well, I say they're not updated in real time. You have to click on the refresh button to update them, but they are, the live data. Other than that, in some ways, that's quite nice, because one of the things about looking at the logs in the GUI is that if you've got a lot of traffic happening, they're scrolling past the screen before you can read them. So it's often a nice way of getting access to the logs, and you can set up filters as well to help you find the relevant parts of the log. They're not color coded though. That's the only thing you don't see. That's only through the GUI. You can configure branding options within WorldClient, where you can change the logos, and if you really want to, you can start editing the HTML code to change color schemes and things, or make your own custom theme. Generally speaking, what people want to do is to brand the main log-on screen is the key feature here. And I just wanted to point out, even all of the tasks, which I can't go through them all now, there won't be enough time, but things like, managing users, this can all be done through WebAdmin if you need to add or edit any of those settings. It doesn't matter if you've set things up through the GUI, you can switch any time to WebAdmin and vice versa. Last few things I wanted to mention: the security within MDaemon. I used to run a webinar that was well, it was an hour long, but it used to even stretch beyond that. That was purely on the security. So I will have to sort of look at this at a very high level. But there's an awful lot of different technology within MDaemon that's not just talking about anti-spam and antivirus, which is the key thing you do need to do with email flow. But I've sort of categorized the different security systems here on the left into different categories. So I'll just talk through them here. I start with real-time lookup-based blocking. If you imagine messages come into MDaemon, this is kind of the order that things happen. So the first stage is to look up against real-time databases to see if the message matches patterns that are known to be used in ongoing threats right now. And that first stage is through the outbreak protection feature. So it's looking for bits of messages, is the best way of putting it, that match other bits of messages that are seen in a large volume of email right now, and that kind of flags up, well, this is a widely distributed message. It's not just a one-off that you're receiving. It's more likely to be spam for that reason as well, and because lots of different technologies are feeding back information to say, no, this is spam, we've seen it before. That's all shared, and it's a very accurate way of getting rid of a large proportion of the email spam right away. Another real-time lookup method is the DNS blacklist to look up. Checking the server's IP address that's sending messages. Are they on one of the known blacklists right now? And that helps it determine and score the message as being spam. Then you might look at actually activity-based blocking. So we're not now looking at what's in the message. We're looking at who's connecting to us and how often they're connecting to us. Are they trying to guess email addresses? Are they trying to guess account logon details? Are they trying to authenticate with the server? If they have authenticated with the server, are they sending an unusual volume of email? That's anti-hijack, account hijack detection. Accounts in fact, this is a very common threat that we are seeing a lot of at the moment, is spammers are connecting to servers, authenticating as a valid account straight away with the right username and password. They're not guessing the account, they're authenticating straight away, and then because they're authenticated, they're allowed to send a large volume of email. Well, the account hijacking feature can be tuned to detect that and shut down the account straight away if it thinks, well, this user doesn't normally send 1,000 messages in 3 minutes. That's unusual activity. Let's slow things down, and in fact let's cancel the account straight away. And that stops you getting blacklisted. That's the problem with becoming a relay, as well as the denial of service attack that's effectively happening. You lose all this bandwidth. your IP address, your mail server would get blacklisted, and then you've got to go through the hassle of being delisted and tightening up your security, changing all your passwords. This feature, minimizes the effect by limiting it to a very small number of messages that could get out if they know your username and password. Obviously, the fundamental problem here is that users have to have strong usernames and passwords, and more importantly, never use them outside of MDaemon. Often the reason that these accounts get compromised is because they have the same email address and password stored in another system, and it's that system that's database has been captured. As well as anti-hijacking, the general sort of user activity detection, how many times a server connects to MDaemon in a set amount of minutes. You can fine-tune this, and it can be quite a good way of looking for spammers versus legitimate mail. Spammers tend to attack and try and send a large volume of email all at once. So these are all tricks that you can set up within MDaemon to help spot the difference between a valid sender and a spammer. Then you've got the flip side is reputation and validation tools, ways of making your email, when you're sending email, more likely to be received because you're trusted. So we've got things like sender policy framework, SPF records, signing your messages, telling the world which servers are allowed to send as your domain, and when the receiving server detects that, they can be more confident that it's come from you, not just somebody claiming to be you. DKIM is another method where you actually sign the message, and it's, as well as sort of saying it's coming from the valid sender, you're guaranteeing that the data hasn't changed in transit. It's got like a hash associated with it. These are technologies that the receiving server needs to use, but they're not only technologies used by MDaemon. These are used by all of the large mail provider systems. IP shielding is key to stopping spammers just sending to your server claiming to be local addresses. You want to only allow known people to send claiming to be your own domain. And that's really tied into the whole need to use SMTP authentication across the board. All modern clients will use SMTP authentication when sending emails. Whether you choose to use it or not is the difference between whether you're secure or not. But with MDaemon, you can limit connections to only be accepted if they use SMTP authentication. Then we get to the sort of the key message filtering rules, the heuristic rules, where you're looking for patterns, known patterns that have matched threats in the past. That's using the spam assassin rule set. Bayesian is a sort of extension to that, where you're looking at more adapting rules that are based on the number of messages you've received in the past that you've flagged as spam or not. Tend to find that that's got to be carefully monitored to be accurate. We often aren't using that feature these days. Dropping down into standard whitelist and blacklist, known senders and by addresses or hosts that you do or don't want to receive from. The antivirus filtering is very much a message filtering feature that currently uses a Kaspersky engine to scan all messages and attachments, compressed attachments, looking for messages with known attachment types, but also signatures for known virus types. And then the sort of final level of filtering is the content filtering engine, which is more sort of user-defined rules that you can filter specific content out from and do other things. I'll talk about that in a couple of slides before we finish off. And then the very sort of final level of security is manual screening, getting rid of those nuisance emails, blocking hosts outright because you know their IPs, their names, or their domains. It's a very manual firewall, effectively, that you can add on at the bottom. Last couple of features before we run out of time. I'd like to mention mailing lists, because mailing lists are often overlooked in MDaemon, and people don't really know what they're there for. There's two key features, two key reasons for using mailing lists. One is distribution lists, inbound lists, and by that I mean you create a list with a name, let's say in this example staff, and you add all the members of staff that are local users. And the idea being that if you make that list public, people on the internet can email staff at your domain, and in effect that message gets accepted and then delivered to lots of users. So it's a way of sort of collecting email on one address and distributing it to multiple other users. Very basic inbound list management. But that's not really where lists stop. That's the simple way of looking at them. The other way to think about them is for outbound email, where maybe you want to do a mail shot. And then you would have an email address internally that only you can use as a company. So maybe, mailshot at your domain. The only people that are allowed to send to the list are predefined addresses in the members list. So you may add yourself as a post-only member, or have post rights to that list, and then the rest of the members may be all of your customers, maybe hundreds or thousands of users in this list that can only ever receive from the list. They can't send to the list, they're only there to receive from the list. And this way you can have a mail shot where you email the list, and the list then you only send one email message to MDaemon, turn off your computer, leave it, and MDaemon will then manage the process of re-delivering that message to thousands and thousands of users, dealing with those servers that haven't responding, the retries, and etc. So mail lists are very powerful, and if you're interested to know more about that, please feel free to get in touch, because it's something that I often find I'm talking to customers about, and they have no idea that these sort of features are available. The lists themselves, the way you manage the users, you can either add them manually, so you can just manage the list and just add users one by one. Either internal users you can select from a list, from a list, a pull-down list, I should say, or you can just add email addresses manually, or you can link it into an Active Directory if you've got Active Directory already set up on the system and you need to pull in a group of users from there. You can even link it through to an ODBC database connection if you have an external system that has a link for all of your customers, and you know that's always up to date. You can have MDaemon query that directly. There's ability to subscribe and unsubscribe users from the list automatically, and this is very useful for public mail shot type lists, where you can advertise an email address that if you send an email to it, if you're not already a member, it will respond automatically and say, would you like to subscribe to this list? If so, please reply to this message. And if they reply to that message, then they get added automatically. And likewise, a similar feature for unsubscribing. So you can manage the whole process of adding people to a list, so that you know that in the future, if you send something to that list, it's going to go to all the people who actually want to receive it. And there's notifications built in there as well to notify admin users when people get added or removed from the list. I should mention as well, you can manage lists through web admin, either as an admin account or as a user account that needs access to just do this function. So often you find that the marketing manager wants to manage the list, but you don't want to give them full admin access to MDaemon. You can configure that. The last feature I want to sort of introduce is the content filter. I just wanted to mention this because it's another feature that's often overlooked that I think is very powerful and makes MDaemon stand out compared to a lot of other products. The content filter is all about managing email flow. As these messages come into MDaemon, you don't just have to deliver them, you can change them in transit and do some very clever things. You can match on specific conditions. So you see down the left-hand side, we've got lots of different conditions to match on, and then you can take actions based on matching on those messages. You can do things like replace message headers. One example we have is when messages come in from a particular address, you can change who they appear to go out as. So you can sort of almost hide the identity, inbound or outbound. And you can do things like generate new messages off the fact that you've matched on a message. So you could say, every time I receive a message that matches these conditions, and send a new message to this other system that will say, alert, you've received one of these messages, that sort of thing. And you can do things like create custom logs. You can write out to files, so you can generate logs that contain the data. You might want to know how many times did I receive a mail that had this particular subject line in, because that's a system sending me an alert and I want a log of how many times it's received it. So you can do very detailed specific tasks here. Again, I used to do a webinar dedicated to content filter management, so it's a very quick overview here. But this example is I don't know if it shows up very well on this on the webinar, but basically this example is to monitor an email account, effectively eavesdrop on a customer. And I have been asked this on many occasions, where a manager wants to know, wants a copy of every email when it's sent to a particular inbound internal user. And this rule is effectively doing that. It's saying, if I read through the rule, you add the conditions, and then at the bottom you see it's building up this rule. So if we read through the rule, it's effectively saying, apply this rule to all messages in the local and remote queue. inbound and outbound effectively. If the from header contains fred@blogs.com, if it's from Fred, or if the delivered to address header contains fred@blogs.com, if it's to Fred. So if it's from or to Fred, then copy the message into the folder, and because MDaemon stores all mail in a specific folder on the server, Windows folder, I've pointed here to the user John's inbox, and in there he's actually created a folder called Monitor Fred. So in essence, what we're doing is saying every time Fred sends or receives an email, put it into John's mailbox, but store it under a separate folder so he doesn't mix it up with his own email. A simple example, but it just gives you a feeling of the sort of thing you can do. And you can layer up multiple rules. They're top down, so you can have 20, 30 rules, and you can have rules that skip other rules. It's quite a powerful programming feature. So really, just to wrap up, next steps, what we'd really like people to do. Where's my slide? There's my slide. If you don't know already, MDaemon is available free, fully functional for 30 days. That's both MDaemon, the main application, Security Plus, the antivirus, anti-spam extension, and Outlook connector. They're all available free for 30 days. You can download them from our website, ZenSoftware.co.uk, and install them. You don't have to install them on a server. You can test them on your own machine if you like. We do have a partner program. We primarily, sell through our partner program. We're always on the lookout for new IT resellers to join the partner program. There's lots of information about that on the website. Again, I won't go through that in detail now, but part of that key is that you can apply for an NFR license for your own use. If you haven't already, we do a lot of, I write a lot of information for our blog, myself and my colleague James. Have a look there. There's a lot of detailed sort of support query shared posts where we sort of share information, and there's a lot of information on MDaemon that we like to share out once we've discovered a new way of doing something or a new particular threat that we need to tackle. So yeah, have a look at the blog, lots of information there. We do have technical and marketing support. As a company, we're very technical focused. If you haven't dealt with us already, we're always here for support. All of our licenses, when you buy them, you buy them with, or you have the option to buy them with upgrade protection. So if you have upgrade protection, we will offer free support for the life of that upgrade protection, and then you can renew that year on year as a renewal. The upgrade protection allows you to get the latest version of the software, and we will say as long as you can do that, we can support you. And finally, hopefully you all come via the YouTube channel. Subscribe. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. It always helps to get more and more people subscribed there. It helps our presence generally, as well as obviously giving you links to new webinars as we do them. So really, that's everything I wanted to cover. Sorry, it's overrun a little bit there. It's a lot to try and cram in. I mentioned really at the beginning that I was trying to make this webinar a brief overview. If there are any sort of areas that you felt, I've skipped over that a bit, or maybe I've waffled too much on something that you already knew, feel free to drop me a comment in the Q&A section. I will hang around now for 10-15 minutes if anybody does have any more specific questions that they want me to answer. But other than that, hopefully it's been useful. Thanks for coming.